Just try to imagine a world completely shattered. I mean, cities are just ruins, tens of millions of people are gone, and for the very first time, humanity has the power to literally wipe itself out in a single flash of light. That was the reality in 1945. So let's get into the incredible story of how, from those exact ashes, a new hope for global peace was forged: the United Nations.
But here was the problem. The world had actually tried this once before. There was this group called the League of Nations, and it had failed. I mean, spectacularly. World War I was supposed to be the war to end all wars. But just 20 years later, the world was in flames again, in a conflict that was even worse. The first attempt at global peace just couldn't stop it.
So the big question on everyone's mind was, how do you get it right this time? How do you build something strong enough, with enough buy-in, to actually prevent another global catastrophe? This picture right here of the UN Charter being signed, well, that's the world's determined answer to that very question.
Okay, so to really get the UN, you first have to understand why it was even created. We got to go back and look at the failure that came before it, and the absolute horror that made it so necessary.
Right. So after World War I, the League of Nations was formed. The idea was great, use diplomacy to stop wars before they start. But it had a fatal flaw. It had no real power, no way to enforce its decisions. And maybe most importantly, some of the biggest countries, like the United States, never even joined. So when aggressive nations started making moves, the League was basically powerless. That failure was a huge lesson for the people who designed the UN.
And then, everything changed. The end of World War II unleashed the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. As the source material puts it, this brought untold devastation. All of a sudden, the next World War wouldn't just be a disaster, it could be the end of everything. The stakes for human survival had just been raised to the absolute maximum.
It was that terrifying new reality that really lit a fire under everyone. A new, much stronger plan started to come together. And this wasn't some rushed job. It was a careful, step-by-step process that took years. So let's walk through how it happened.
The idea for the UN didn't just pop up overnight. It was built piece by piece, right in the middle of the war. It started with some early promises back in 1941. The name United Nations was first used in 42. By 43, the major world powers were officially on board. They drafted a blueprint in 44, and that led to the final charter in 1945, a very deliberate process.
And leading the charge were the leaders of the main Allied powers, Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin, famously known as the Big Three. I mean, think about it. These guys had huge disagreements, but they knew that some kind of post-war cooperation was absolutely non-negotiable.
And then, finally, after all those years of planning, negotiating, and hoping, it was real. On October 24, 1945, the Charter was ratified and the United Nations officially came into being. And we still celebrate that day every year as United Nations Day.
So the organization was born. But what exactly was it supposed to do? Well, the answers are all laid out in its founding document, the UN Charter. And wow, when you look at the goals, you see just how ambitious this thing really was. It wasn't just about stopping wars. It was about proactively keeping the peace, building friendships between nations, protecting human rights for everyone, and working together on huge global problems like poverty and disease. It was meant to be the one place where the world could come together.
Now here's the really cool idea at the heart of it all. The whole system is built on this principle of sovereign equality. What does that mean? It means that whether you're a giant superpower or a tiny island nation, inside the UN you're an equal member with an equal voice.
Okay, so you've got this huge mission. How do you actually pull it off? Well, you need a structure. So let's take a look under the hood and see how the UN is actually set up to do all this. To handle these massive goals, the UN is broken down into a whole system. But at its core, everything is built around 6 principal organs. Just think of them as the main pillars holding the whole structure up, and each one has a very specific job to do.
So what are these 6 pillars? Well, you've got the General Assembly, the Security Council, the International Court of Justice, the Economic and Social Council, the Trusteeship Council, and the Secretariat. Now, that's a lot of councils, right? But don't worry, we're going to focus on the ones you really hear about in the news.
First up, the General Assembly. And the source material gives us a perfect way to think about it. It's like a giant international parliament. This is the one place where all 193 member countries come together and each one gets a single vote. It's the most democratic part of the whole UN.
But then, you have the Security Council. And this slide really makes the difference pop.
While the General Assembly is huge and democratic, the Security Council is small, exclusive, and incredibly powerful. It's the executive branch, the one with the real power to maintain peace and security. And how it's structured is completely different.
So, the Council has just 15 members. 10 are elected for 2-year terms. But it's the other 5 that are the real story. They are permanent members: China, France, Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. And that permanent seat comes with a very special and very controversial power.
That power is the veto, and this is so crucial. If a resolution comes up for a vote, you could have 14 members say yes, but if just one of those 5 permanent members says no, the resolution is dead. Now, this was a compromise. The founders knew that for the UN to actually have teeth, the world's biggest powers had to be on board. The veto was the way to guarantee their interests were protected so they wouldn't just walk away. It's what has kept them in the game, but man, it is still one of the most debated parts of the UN today. And rounding out our little tour, we have the International Court of Justice. This is basically the UN's top court. It's based in The Hague, and its job is pretty straightforward. It settles legal fights between countries. Think of it as the world's courthouse.
All right, so we've journeyed from the rubble of a global war all the way to the halls of global diplomacy. We've seen how the UN was literally born from a catastrophe with the highest possible hopes for humanity. So before we wrap up, let's just lock in the biggest takeaways.
So if you remember just 4 things, make it these. First, the UN came directly out of the failures of the League of Nations and the devastation of World War II. Second, its mission is huge, not just stopping war, but building a better world through cooperation. Third, it does its work through 6 main bodies. And finally, the most powerful body, the Security Council, is defined by that critical veto power held by its 5 permanent members.
And all of this brings us to one last really big question. The UN was created more than 75 years ago to save future generations from the scourge of war. When you look at the world today, is that mission finished? And is the structure they built back in 1945 still the right one for the challenges we face now? That's definitely something to think about.